What's up, theorists? Welcome back to Theory Hammer. I'm your host, KevBot, and today we are taking a look at the Orks Index, and we're actually going to break this down, and we're going to take a look at some of their good units. We're going to kind of go over how their units work and some of their mission play. We're going to go over points. We're going to go over all their stratagems, and we're going to kind of put it all together. There's a lot to go over because the Orks have a lot of different things that are good. So if you like this kind of content, crump that like button, subscribe to Theory Hammer, leave a comment down below, tell us what you think of the Orks, tell us what your strategies are, hit the bell of Nurgle, and then check out our other videos as well. We have all kinds of content, and we make new content regularly that we are always trying to improve on. So I'm no expert here. I've played a lot against the Orks, I've seen their stats, I've seen their army lists, and this is what I think. I think they are awesome. If I miss anything, be sure to leave it down below, but we're just going to start it right off with their army rule, which is the WOG. They do this at the start of the battle round. They just say, I'm gonna WOG. Their army gets a 5-up invuln. They get +1 strength, they get +1 attack, and they can advance and charge. So they get 4 different things. It sucks that it's only once a game. It's weird that you have to do it at the start of the battle round, although that has some give and takes. So if it's your opponent's turn, you just go, my army has a 5-up invuln this turn. If you charge me, I have +1 to my strength, I have +1 to my attacks, all that fun stuff. And then your detachment rule that you have right now is sustained hits 1 in combat, which is overall pretty good. It helps your army do what it's trying to accomplish, which is to get into combat and actually kill stuff, and it helps you do the killing part of that. You have enough stuff to get into combat with already. Your army is just kind of all combat. Its shooting is kind of mid. It's not going to be doing a whole lot of damage. Shooting in this edition is rather difficult as well, at least at far range, and so their shooting units are generally grot stuff, and that shit dies pretty quick unless it's grot tanks. Those are on my list, and we're going to talk about them as well. But yeah, the Orks do one thing. They charge into combat, and they just get onto objectives, and they play the objective game. They've got a decent amount of units that allow them to do secondary stuff as well, kind of like Storm Boys. You got like grots that can infiltrate. But overall, you've got cheap, fast units like trucks. You can put guys inside those trucks. They have a lot of really good transport play. They have threatening units they can put inside. The stuff inside can shoot out if it really wants to, which there are some things that do want to do that as well that we'll go over. And so you can play the Orks in a lot of different ways. You could actually play just a pure like shooting Ork army if you want to play all like grot stuff. You can play a pig army where you're just riding these hogs and they're getting into combat and you're crumping people's faces. You could just play a bunch of tanks. That would be a bad army, but you could also just play a flood of boys. And so the army itself gives you, there's not a lot of internal balance, I guess, but there's a lot of units like that that gives you the ability to take a variety of different armies, some better than others, and the some are going to be the ones that we talk about right now. So let's get to their stratagems and enhancements first. All right, so you got the Wa tribe. These are their enhancements. Follow me, lads, 25 points, +2 to your move characteristic for models in the unit and the bearer. All right, very straightforward, very simple. Head Wappas, kill Choppa, 20 points. Melee weapons equipped by the bearer that do not have extra attacks have devastating wounds. Awesome. 20 points for devastating wounds on your characters seems good because you have a lot of different characters to pick from. You got cunning, but brutal. It's 15 points, Ork model only while the bearer is leading a unit, eligible to shoot and declare a charge in a turn in which it fell back. That's the worst one. And then super cyborg body, 4-up feel no pain, put that on something kind of like, I don't know, Mazrag type model, then it becomes real hard to kill. So you got a beast boss on a Squigosaur, he's got a 4-up feel no pain, he's toughness 10, he's going to be -1 to wound because of things we're going to get to in a second. It's very exciting stuff. This shit is awesome. All these, except for Cunning but Brutal, is very good. And they're priced very appropriately, and so I like it. Orks don't have all that much combo-y stuff. That's not how they play. They're not tricksy. They're not cunning. They're just brutal. So, they're careening. They're brutally careening at you epically for 1 CP. Any phase just after an Ork vehicle's unit from your army with the Deadly Demise ability is destroyed, you target that Ork vehicle unit, you roll a dice. You target that destroyed Ork vehicle. If you roll a 6 for its Deadly Demise, you can use the stratagem on that unit even though it was just destroyed. Your unit can make a normal move or a fallback move before its Deadly Demise ability is resolved and before any embarked units perform an emergency disembarkation. When making this move, your unit can move over enemy units as if they were not there, and excluding monsters and vehicles. You can't like ramp off of a fucking hive tyrant's face. But you can drive straight through your opponent, get behind a wall, explode there, be safe, and then in your next turn, then move the guys out that were inside. Oh yeah, Kareen is awesome. You can move him onto an objective, you can move him closer to your opponent, you can block your opponent out, you can do all kinds of cool shit with Kareen. It's really the only tricksy thing that the Orks have, is the Kareen. Because it gives you a lot of options that you didn't otherwise have. And Orks is never beaten. That's your next one. It's 2 CP, it's an epic deed, it's in your fight phase just after an enemy unit selects its targets. You target an Ork unit from your army, that was the target of those attacks. Your guys just fight on death. You don't have to roll dice, they just do it if you kill them. I love it. 2 CP, but when you've got an entire unit of boys or an entire unit of like Squig Hog boys that just got charged by something and they're gonna get crapped on, being able to fight back automatically is pretty fucking good. So that is also a really good one on a ton of different targets, especially if it's something like one of your characters that has dev wounds or like a unit of knobs. There's a plethora of different things. It's a Squigith, put this on a Squigith. Do flat 12 damage to people. Yeah, the Squigith does flat 12 damage. So this is awesome as well. Then you have Unbridled Carnage for 1 CP. It's in the fight phase. You target an Ork unit from your army that was not selected to fight until the end of the phase. Each time that model makes a melee attack, an unmodified 5-up is a critical hit. So because of their detachment rule, where they have sustained hits 1, those proc on 5s instead of on 6s. And that's just all the time when they're in combat. You can just use this in any phase during the fight phase, and you're just going to get that sustained hits on a 5-up. So that's awesome on a big unit of guys. That's awesome on a really powerful punchy thing. 1 CP, nice. Your Art as Nails, your Orks, you're very, very tough. Your battle tactic for 1 CP. This is in your opponent's shooting phase or the fight phase, just after the enemy selects its targets. You target the unit that was selected as their target, and then you subtract 1 from the wound roll. That's what you get from this. You can subtract 1 from the wound roll. Put this on a Squigith, because then it becomes impossible to kill that thing. But more than likely, you're going to put this on something like Mozrog, or the equivalent like the War Beast, Squig-based, Rides a Beast, Mr. Beast guy. The big one that's like Mozrog, I can't remember the fucking name right now. But that's awesome when he's -1 to wound. It's a very scary unit. You can have very durable units of Squig Hog Riders that are just chilling on an objective. Toughness 7 with 3 wounds and a 5-up deal no pain. -1 to wound that unit, just straight up. Oof, that's hard. And so, yeah, great stratagem. Great stratagem. Then you have the Mob Rule, which is in your command phase for 1 CP. 1 mob unit from your army that contains 10 or more models and is not below half strength. Until the start of your next command phase, while a friendly Orcs infantry unit is within 6 inches of that mob unit, that Orcs unit can still be selected as the target of a stratagem even if it's battle shocked. So this I'm not a huge fan of. Orc units, unless you're taking huge squads, they do just tend to die entirely. So I could see this having a niche, but it has to be a mob unit, which are mainly just your boys and stuff. And so, it's kind of meh. It's one of those things where you're spending a CP to be able to spend more CP on things that might be battle shocked. You know, it's kind of just fucking awful. So don't waste your time on that one. Just forget it exists. And then here we go is the last one. This is at the start of your movement phase for 1 CP. You target 1 Orc unit from your army. It's very straightforward. You add 2 to the advance and charge rolls for that unit. And on the turn when you're calling the WOG, you're going to be able to advance and charge. Putting it on a unit of Squig Hog Riders. Well, they've got the here we go thing, big stratagem enhancement relic that we talked about a second ago. The one where it gives you +2 to your move. So they're going to be moving 12. They're going to be advancing, call it an average roll for 3. So now they're going 15, 16, 17. They're allowed to charge, and they add 2 to the charge roll. So if they roll like an average roll of 7, now it's a 9. And so that's a 26-inch move that this unit can do with an here we go. So really nice stratagems here, except for, 1, maybe 2 that aren't as good as others, but for sure, Mob Rule's definitely the fucking worst one. God. Battle Shock, yay, you can use stratagems on this unit, even though you just spent 1 to do this, just fuck that. And so I think we have a pretty good idea of what the Orcs want to do. They have stuff that makes them move faster, they have stuff that makes them tougher, and they have stuff that makes them fight. So they're going to be a fighty army, no matter which way you slice it. If you're playing a shooty army, then you're not getting the benefit of any of your stratagems, essentially. And so let's just go. Let's just do it. I'm excited for orcs. You can probably tell. Let's take a look at some of these good data sheets, because some of them are real good. All right. So first up, the Grot tanks. They're toughness 6, they have 5 wounds, they have a 10-inch move. Each one of them has a heavy weapon, so, you know, a rocket launcher, a flamer, something like that. Custom Mega Blaster. But because they're Grots, they hit on 4s. And like the Sergeant type tank thing, it actually gets 2 of those things. So if you take 4 of these, you have 5 missiles that you can put on them. And I think that's the loadout that you go with, personally. But these things are OC2. They are a unit of them, like in total, it's 40 wounds at toughness 6, and it's 16 OC. These things can move 6 inches if you get within 9 inches of them. They have like a scatter thing, so that's really, really good, and they're 155 points. 155 points. 310 points for 20 rocket shots hitting on 4s against like a 10-man Terminator squad. You know, it'll be like 36 shots. That's because of blast. So you're getting a ton of fucking shots with these rockets. You look at the fucking guardsman squad and you're like, how many guys are in that unit? There's 25-ish? Okay, so each one of these is +5, and then it's D3. So each one of these guys is shooting 7 rockets at this guardsman squad. You have 8 of them in a squad. That's 56 rockets, which is just fucking hilarious. So these things are really, really good. You should definitely take at least a unit of 4 just to have those rockets shooting and hitting on 4s. Just 5 backfield rockets. It's 8 OC, scatters away. It's toughness 6 with 5 wounds apiece. They're not easy to get to. They're not easy to kill. I really, really like them. I don't know how you can go wrong if you take a unit of Grot tanks, so put them in your list. But don't forget knobs, because knobs are pretty good too. They are 110 points. Their combat is pretty good, especially with their detachment rule, because they're getting those sustained hits. They're all going to have a power fist. It's 3 attacks, a strength 9, AP 2, and damage 2. But unlike Space Marines, for whatever fucking reason, they only hit on 4s. But at 105 points, they are pretty cheap. They're an easy thing to like threat overload with when you have like multiple units that are all trying to get into combat with your opponent. It's nice to have like just a bunch of knobs that are just like, hey, you forgot about the knobs. Bunch of strength 9, AP 2. They go into transports, they go into your trucks, and they pop out and kill stuff. So they're pretty nice to have. I'd probably take at least 1 unit of them with maybe with a war boss, or I could just take like 3 little squads, but they are better with a war boss because they get +1 to hit, because war bosses give +1 to hit with the unit that they're leading. And they are -1 to be wounded if you are led by a war boss or something like that. Just led by, yeah, a war boss specifically. Okay. So, yeah, they're okay. They're 105 points. They're definitely worth their points, and they're definitely going to be in your army. The Mega Knobs may be as well, because they are also pretty good. It's 180 points for 6, so you're not paying really a big premium for them. They're toughness 6, and they have a 2-up save, so they're decently tanky with 3 wounds. And then when they wog, they get dev wounds. So decent output on these guys. Again, hitting on 4s unless they're led by something. And honestly, the number of attacks they have is absolutely abysmal. I don't know how you can justify that. But like for their points, they are definitely something you should consider. I'm tempted to give them a Power Claw just because it lets them get more attacks. Although the Twin Kill Saw may be what you end up going with, but if you put it all together, 6 of them with 12 attacks total in the unit, that's going to only be 8 hits. They're strength 12, they're AP 3, and they're 2 damage, so they're not going to be killing everything on the planet, but, you know, after 8 hits, twin linked, it's going to be 6 wounds on something really tough, like a Land Raider, or it's going to be like 8 wounds on something not so tough, depending on what it is, if you're wounding it on 2s or what. 8 attacks wounding on 3s, I mean, that's still practically 7 wounds, and that extra AP 3, that's really pushing it in this edition. Getting up to AP 3 and 4 is really where you start killing things, and so these guys are pretty good. Cheap, they have a gun that never hits on anything, but what do you want from them? They're knobs, they're orcs. So, we got a lot to run through though, so I'm just going to go right on to the next unit and talk about the trucks. This is going to be your transport for your knobs and your mega knobs and a couple of other things. This thing is going to be getting you around the table, it's going to be getting you onto your objectives, it's going to be keeping your guys safe while they shoot out of it. It's going to give them a platform to move from and be able to get out and charge. And these things are dirt cheap. 65. They're fast, they're cheap, they're awesome. Everyone can shoot out, like I said. You careen them as well. So once you do have one on the objective, you can actually just fling one up on your opponent's face. You could put one behind a wall and have the guys get out safely. You can do all kinds of stuff with these things. And they can transport almost all the infantry in your army except for Ghazghkull, so they can get those mega knobs in there. They can get the regular knobs in there. And they even have builds with shooting because they're just an open top transport. You can put 10 flash kits in one of these things and just shoot 36 shots out of this. Or 30, I guess. But then you pop a mech there and you give it +1 to hit. Now you've got this gunboat that drives up there. It's hitting with 15 strength 6 AP1 shots. I think it has sustained hits as well on the flash kits, which I don't remember, but they're on one of the next slides here. And so I'll most certainly talk about putting them in a truck in a second. But just overall, the truck is super duper good. Transports in this edition are just super duper good in general, and I fucking love this thing. I've had to play against them enough times to know that they are really, really good. You gotta crack them open first, then you gotta get to the guys inside. If you're trying to do that in a way where you're getting into combat, it starts getting difficult when they've got multiple things on objectives that both have things inside. You crack one open, cool. You kill the guys inside with like a charge or something, cool. Now there's another unit there. So now you actually can't do that in the first place. Now you have to decide, like, do I even want to commit over onto that objective because I can't kill both things necessarily. So pretty awesome. I love transports. Your Squig guys, 250 points for 6. These are tough. Forward tough. They are toughness 7 with 5 of feel no pain. So maybe not quite forward tough, but tough enough to get rough and stuff. Anti-monster 4-up and anti-vehicle 4-up. They have lots of damage in combat, although I wish that their AP was a little better, but I digress. They do put out a decent amount of combat damage, and they're pretty fast, and they move 10. You can't slow them down. You can't do anything to their movement, so they're Shadow Weavers, or whatever, the Night Spinners, the things that shoot you and have your movement, or just anything in the game that makes your movement slower. They say, no sir, we're going to come flying toward you on our giant hogs. We got massive hogs here. Look at our hogs, please. So these things are awesome. They actually have some shooting too, although it's not really relevant. You're more taking them because they're super durable for their points. They put out a decent amount of damage, and the movement can't be slowed, so you can really get them where they need to go. And if you're taking, you know, like a knob with them, who's then taking follow me lads, so that they're getting that +2 move, they're now moving 12. Oh yeah, they're getting up there, they're getting right in your opponent's face, right where you need them to be. And so your opponent is then forced to choose between going after these transports that have knobs inside, or going after your Squig boys, which are anti-vehicle and anti-monster 4+. So they'll actually start putting wounds through on your infantry, or on your tanks and your monsters, but also your infantry because they are strength 5 with lance. So pick some of those guys up, they are sweet. That Christmas box that GW announced, that thing is going to be perfect for the orcs because it has all the Squig stuff in there. It's like all the things that you want, including this beast boss on Squigosaur. Comes with one of these things, and he's 165 points. He's horrifyingly hard to kill because he's -1 to wound like all the time, basically, because of the stratagem. Tough as nails. He's okay in combat. He's not like a powerhouse or anything, but he's pretty good with Hellwop as Kill Choppa for the dev wounds. You can 1 CP heroic on it. It gives Beast Naga guys reroll charges that are near him. He's a fire magnet, and he actually just doesn't go down. If you get real spicy with it, you can take like a pain boss guy that can give him back 3 wounds, and then it's just like, oh my god. So him paired up with Mazrog, I think is pretty hilarious. I'm not sure if you take more than that though. Even at 165 points, I don't know if you take 2 of them. But who knows? I mean, they are great. So my only problem with them is you can only give one of them that -1 to wound. And Mazrog by himself is just so damn hard to kill because he's got a 4-up invuln toughness 10 and a 4-up feel no pain. So that 4-up invuln kind of really helps him out, kind of pushes him just to that same point. And so Mazrog himself, let's just talk about him. He's 195 points. He's also impossible to kill. He has +1 damage against monsters and vehicles. And his little Champa, bitey, dinosaur hog, it does mortals on 5-ups because it gets criticals on 5s. So 3 attacks with that thing, strength 7, AP 2, and a damage of 4. His other ability also stacks with it though, so he gets +1 to his damage against monsters and vehicles. It only works on a charge, but, I mean, you're going to be charging. And then his Gut Ripper itself, it isn't bad because it can go up to 4 damage, strength 7, AP 1, and 3 damage normally, but it's anti-monster and anti-vehicle 4-up, and he's got 6 attacks with it. So that is going to be doing some damage to some vehicles and some monsters pretty damn easily. And then his big Champa is just going to be ripping pieces out of people Like, it'll literally just kill an entire Terminator at once, like a assault Terminator. It'll kill like a big Terminator all at once. Just boom, dead, 4 damage. If it's a vehicle, boom, dead, 5 damage with dev wounds on 5s. If it's Titanic, boom, dead, 6 damage with dev wounds on 5s. Just awesome. So this guy's great for his points as well. For 195, he's a little bit more expensive, but you can make him impossible to kill. With a 4 pinball, a 4 feel no pain, -1 to wound at toughness 10, he's just like, yeah, no. There's not a lot of things out there that have the volume to kill something like that. Even like Tau, you're putting so many shots into him. Like a unit of battlesuits like literally doesn't kill him because they're only gonna get like 12 wounds on him. Maybe like 16 wounds or something. Call it like 20 max. So they get 20 wounds on this fucking thing. It only takes 10. It's got a feel no pain and it takes 10 damage. So that would just barely kill it. And I'm not really that good at math. I mean, my channel's called Theory Hammer. But it seems to me when you shoot a 500 point unit at a 200 point unit and just barely kill it, it's probably not a good trade. So while they will still do it, it takes their entire unit to shoot and kill that one fucking model. And you didn't deal with all the trucks with knobs inside and the Squig Hog boys and all the other stuff. So threat overload. That's what this army is good at. It's just good at threat overload. How about some flashy gits? These guys are pretty fucking awesome. They are a pretty good shooting unit, and this is what they got. They got 3 shots at strength 6, AP 1, and damage 2 with sustained 1. It's 24-inch range, and they can get lethal hits once a game. That's like their ability. So if you're in a truck, it's shooting 30 shots. The mech is going to make it BS4, so like I said earlier, it's going to be hitting on 4s. You're going to be getting 15 hits with that, with sustained hits out of those 30 shots. How many 6s are you going to get? The answer is 5. You're going to add 5 additional hits to that, and so you're going to be getting 20 hits out of this. At strength 6, AP 1, and 2 damage. Not bad at all. And then in combat, the knobs themselves, you know, they're flash gits, so... And then in combat, the flash gits themselves are knobs. So they got 4 attacks at strength 5, AP 1, and 1 damage. They'll have 5 attacks at strength 6 on the WOG. And they are 190 points for 10. They're only 19 points apiece. They're 2 wounds. They got a 4-up save. They're toughness 5, so they're durable enough. But yeah, for 190 points, hell yeah. You have to take at least 1 unit, put it in a truck, and take a mech with it. Because it'll just drive up the side of the table, and it'll just kill a unit. For free. It'll just be like, oh yeah, that unit's dead. And then your opponent will be like, okay, I need to kill this truck right now. And then they will. And if you're playing it right, hopefully you can put them in a place where they can't be seen, behind a wall, inside of a building, something along those lines. Ideally, you've put your truck in that position on purpose. But let's say you can do it, you get out, next turn, they get to move and do the same thing again next turn, and then they're going to get their combat that turn. So you should get at least 2 turns of shooting out of these guys, if not 3, if you're playing with them right. And if you're threat overloading, doing the same thing I've been saying, where you just got all these other units up in your opponent's face where they can't really deal with the stuff in the back because they have to deal with the stuff in the front, because that's the stuff on the objectives. That's the stuff they need to get rid of, and generally speaking, it's going to be more of the durable stuff, like your Squig Hog stuff. So who's up next? It's the Storm Boys. They're storming in. They got Deep Strike. They're good for secondaries, so they're 65 points. That's the only reason why they're on the list. But hey, they're cheaper than a squad of sisters, right? A squad of Seraphim. They Deep Strike down, and they get you points. That's all I care about. Those are the games that I like to play, the ones where I just get points and don't have to think about anything else. So Storm Boys, I'd probably take 2 units of them. Straight up. If I were building a competitive orc list, it would have a lot of secondary units because that's how you win games, guys. Pro tip. Take units that let you get secondaries. So real quick introduction with them, real quick out with them. In, out, quick. Goodbye, Storm Boys. You are good. 65 points. So you got regular boys. These are your horde unit. You can take either Beast Snagga boys or regular boys. The regular boys are 170 points for 20 of them. Yeah, cheap. Cheapo, cheapy, cheap. OC2, just overwhelming toughness 5 bodies. I like it. And there's not much more to them. You can either run them as shooting or just with choppas. I would probably go with the choppas because it's much better for your WOG. You'll be killing people a lot better with those things. But overall, they're just a big horde unit. That's what they're designed to do, and that's what they are good at doing. So we've been talking about the mech a little bit. And this is what he does. He's a cheap 45-point character. He's got lone op if he's near vehicles, and you can pick a vehicle to get +1 to hit in your movement phase. So unlike the Space Marines and a few other like Tech Marine type things, they will only be able to do their ability in the command phase, which fucking sucks. But The Mechamaniac, it happens in your movement phase. Specifically, it's at the end, and you just regain D3 lost wounds, and you add +1 to hit for a vehicle. So he's really good. He's 45 points, and he's a lone operative. You have access to some pretty cheap vehicles as well, like Grot tanks and mech guns, so you can pretty much keep him alive. And he's just back there being like, hey, I'm repairing stuff if it's damaged. I'm giving it +1 to hit. I'm 45 points. I'm on this objective. You can't deep strike near me. The edge of the table's over there. Things are cool. We're smoking our cigar. We got a flamer in our hand or something. Probably just got none of that stuff because the picture's right there. But whatever. But Coptas. We got to talk about the Coptas. The Def Coptas. Coptas of Def. 100 points for 3. They have Copter rockets, so they're twin linked, and they're just regular rockets. So they're D3 shots with twin linked. So 3 of them, that's 3 D3 shots. Average of 6, 2 hits, rerolling wounds, fine. So they have a little thing where they can fly over guys and do damage though, which is after they do a normal move, you just pick an enemy unit they moved over and roll D6 for each model in this unit, and then a 4-up, you do a mortal wound. Nice to have little thing. I kind of like these guys simply because they are toughness 6 with 4 wounds. They're fast because they move 12. They have 6 attacks apiece in combat. They can be, strength 6 if you need them to on the WOG. They can become 7 attacks on the WOG. And they have deep strike, so you can just put them in reserve, bring them down where you need them to, kind of take up an area and hopefully do a secondary or like hold an area of the board for a turn, and then fly away next turn and maybe do something else. So another secondary unit, but probably a little overshadowed by the Storm Boys, just overall, because they also have that deep strike, they got that move. You don't really necessarily need the durability of the Coptas, but you get 12 wounds at toughness 6 for 35 more points. And an overall better unit. It's got shooting, it's got more combat, aside from having a single power fist in the unit like the Storm Boys do, but I don't know, I kind of like the Def Coptas, to be completely honest. We then have the rig that kills. Toughness 10, 16 wounds, 6 up, feel no pain. I don't think it's very expensive.
The kill rig is 170 points.
It's got this little flamer thing on top. It's strength 12 AP3 and D6 damage, so it's like, it's a flamer, so it auto hits. I love that. 18-inch range as well. D3 shots, not very many shots, but it is a really high strength attack. In combat, it's going to be 4 lance attacks at 3 damage flat, so that's pretty awesome as well. And then it's got 4 attacks at strength 10 AP1, another 2 damage. That one's not as great, but overall, for what it does, I actually think it's pretty interesting. Oh, its flamer thing is 24. It would help if I just looked up and saw that. But correction there, it is 24 inches instead of 18, so it's even further range flamer than I said. It's got like a lava on it, none of that other shit matters. Its stick is kind of funny. It's one shot that it's not going to ever hit or do anything, but it is strength 12, AP2, and flat 3 damage, and it snags you. So you add 2 to the charge roll made if this thing charges a snagged thing that it hit maybe once a game. And it also can transport 11 Beast Snagga models, and they can shoot at it if they really want to, so it adds a little bit to it, but not so much. But overall, this thing's pretty cool. It's 200 points. It's got a bunch of wounds, and it's pretty tough. You can make it fly in there and just go crazy with its war tower, just be like, woo, auto hitting, strength 12, AP3, D6 damage. You roll that 3, you're like, cool. 3 auto hits. It flies into combat, crushes your face with anti-vehicle and anti-monster 4 up. It's got those horns, it's strength 8 AP1 and then 3 damage, and then it's got its other 6 attacks with its blades at that strength 10. I think it's good. I think it is pretty good. I haven't really seen them in anybody's list though, so maybe I'm crazy, but just considering everything, all the factors, getting sustained hits 1 on it in combat, I don't know, it seems funny. It's also deadly demise 6, so you could careen it and stuff and do a lot of damage with it. That's kind of funny. But let's talk about commandos, another secondary unit. And personally, I think they're probably a necessity. Unless you're taking Mazrog with like a unit of 20 grots, which is also kind of expensive, then you have to take these goddamn things, which are 135 points. Yes, they're 135 fucking points for 10 of these dumb fucks. The only reason why you would take them is because they have infiltrators and it's a 10-man unit. Not that you can take less than that, but you can take a pretty wide-bodied infiltrator unit, and so you can use that to kind of block people off, play the secondary game, do all that sort of stuff that you'd expect from something like that. But damn, for 135 points, I'm sad I had to put them on the list because I think there's only like one other thing in your army that infiltrates or has scouts, which is your Mazrog unit. If I'm wrong about that, let me know. It's possible I could have missed that somewhere. But I mean, I don't think I did. But who knows? Mech guns, no. Mech guns, yo. 55 points. They hit on 4s. Their guns are pretty cool. The bubble chukka is interesting, and it's kind of weird. I might run the mega cannon. Maybe not. The bubble chukka is pretty good. It's either, so you roll this dice before you pick your target, so you actually get to like tailor it. But if you roll 1 to 2 before it shoots, then it's going to be the first profile, strength 6, AP 1, damage 1, with 2d6 shots and blast. If you roll a 3 to 4, it's going to be strength 9, AP 2, and damage 3 with d6 shots and blast. Or if you roll a 5 to a 6, it's strength 12, AP 3, and d6 plus 3 damage with d3 shots and blast. All the guns are all kind of pretty cool. The tractor cannon used to be so much better, so it's the least cool. The smasher gun is fine, but the custom mega cannon being strength 12 and AP 2 and then the d6 damage, it's a little swingy, also because it has d6 shots, but I don't know. I think personally I'd probably go for the bubble chukka and just try to put those big old wounds on stuff. Even the strength 9 AP 2 one, that one is pretty good as well. So most often you're gonna end up having more output than like the custom mega cannon or the smasher gun, or you're just going to end up getting like one of those profiles anyway, or something close to it. So bubble chukka seems to be the way to go on those guys. And for 55 points, hell yeah. 6 wounds, toughness 5, shitty save, but only 55 points, like I said. Their ability is that they can re-roll the hit roll of 1 if they're attacking a unit that contains 10 or more models. So kind of a shit ability, completely honest. But when you're only paying 55 points for a pretty decent shooting unit in an orc army that's decently tough and has enough wounds to actually let it be a little bit survivable, you can't get everything. Alright, let's talk about Grots, or Gretchen, or whatever the fuck you want to call them. These things are awesome though. They're 40 points for 10 and the little dude that leads them, the little like slave master guy. And these things will give you a CP if they're on an objective at the start of your command phase. You just roll a dice for each one of them that is. On a 4-up, you get a CP. Awesome. Awesome thing. 40 points, they take up a lot of space. You can kind of hold your backfield pretty well with them and bubble people out with them. And then they have that bonus where they're maybe getting you that CP, maybe not. But for 40 points, it's just a great unit to play the game with, even though it's not very tough. It just takes up space. And sometimes that's all you need, though. Sometimes you just need things to take up space, and the Grots do that really, really well. The Gretchen do that really well. So what else you can do with Grots is put Zod Grog Wartsnaga in their unit, and he is awesome because he gives them Scout 9. I don't care about his other abilities except for the special dose, but Scout 9 on just a unit, give me that baby. 80 points, Scout 9 inches, put this guy with them. He's also 80 points, 160 points for a 22-man unit that can Scout 9. It gets you up to those objectives on turn 1. It gets into people's way. It prevents them from getting onto objectives, but it can also be a detriment, so you gotta know what you're doing. You can't just put them willy-nilly up there, because people will use them to slingshot. They'll charge into them and then use it to slingshot around. But this unit can also do some weird stuff, because with the turn you call the Wog, they double their move characteristic. They become, they add 6. And so plus a Wog move, that's at least an 11-inch move with a squad of Grots. They're just a really weird unit, and they're actually pretty good. They're pretty competitive, and they can move really quick onto objectives, which you really want. They have really good OC. Each one of them is 2, so that's 40 OC that you can sling up onto an objective with. It's just a good thing to... It's just good, okay? It's good. Mr. Zoggy Woggy, put him with some Gretchy Wetchies. Just fucking scout him 9 inches. Make a big fucking problem for your opponent. Or use them to cleanse like multiple objectives, because you can definitely do that. You can do that. You can use one unit to cleanse multiple objectives, so they're great for that too. Just awesome. I love units that can play the game. I also love units that are really overpowered, but I love units that can play the game. And I talked about this a little bit earlier, and I saved it for last. The Squiggoth. This is a monster, it's a transport, and it's a Squiggoth. It's toughness 10 with 18 fucking wounds, and it's got a 3-up save. Its melee is 4 attacks at strength 12, AP 2, and damage d6. You can give it the stupid kill cannon thing. This thing's only 150 points. You can make this thing -1 to wound. You can give it lethal hits. You can transport 10 guys inside of it. It's way, way better than a battle wagon. It moves 10. It's toughness 10. You can give it the -1 to wound. Oh yeah. And then each time it is selected to fight, you choose an enemy unit within engagement range, roll d6, adding 2 to the result if it made a charge move, and on a 4 to 5, you suffer d3 mortal wounds. On a 6, you suffer 3. So you kind of don't want to be getting into combat with this thing. It's not amazing, but it's going to have guys inside, and they're going to get out and hurt you. And for 150 points, it's just so durable. And I love the fact that you can do your strat on it to make it -1 to wound. You're never getting through that, unless you're bringing like actual anti-tank weapons. So Squig is pretty awesome. And so is the Gargantuan Squiggoth, because this stupid fucking thing is only 440 points. It's toughness 13 and has 30 wounds. Its ranged weapons are not important. It can take a super cannon. It's 2d6 shots, strength 12, AP 2, and 3 damage with blast. Pretty damn good. Unfortunately, you can't get it +1 to hit, but this thing can transport 20 infantry. This thing can move over stuff because it's a titanic thing. It can shoot into combat, even though it actually can't shoot into combat, but you're here for its melee, because its melee is 6 attacks, strength 14, AP 3, 12 damage flat with lance. So it comes in there, it's got 6 attacks, it's hitting on 3s, 4 of them will hit. It's got 6 attacks, so 1 of them will be sustained. It's got 5 hits at strength 14, +1 to wound. Let's say you fail 1 of them. It's got 4 wounds on its target. It's AP 3. Let's say they get lucky and make 1 of them. And that's on an Imperial Knight. So its huge tusks are fucking hilarious. You can also make this thing -1 to wound. And so you truly can have this thing always be wounded on 6s, unless you're shooting at it with like a railgun or something, in which case you'd be wounding it on like 4s. But dude, toughness 13 at -1 to wound with fuck you in combat is pretty good. It also moves 10, it can advance and charge and can move over the terrain in the middle because it's got that ability. It's gonna get an extra attack when it wogs. It can fight on death. It can do all kinds of nonsense, and I don't understand why people aren't putting one of these in their list. People are like, oh, I'm gonna put this stupid Gorkanaut in my list for like 350 points. And I'm like, why wouldn't you just put a Squiggoth that's tougher, has more wounds, does way more in combat, carries more stuff, has a better gun, and you can use stratagems on it that actually matter, like -1 to wound. And it can move over shit, which I think those things can too. But this thing's faster than those are. So Gargantuan Squiggoth, totally worth 440 points. Totally 100% worth 440 points. But that is it. So, there's a couple of honorable mentions, I guess. Warbikers aren't so bad. They don't have scout or anything like that, but they're 70 points. You get 2 3-wound guys, 1 4-wound guy. You get that power claw in there. They move 12. They have assault weapons, so they can advance and they can do actions that way. They're pretty tough at toughness 6. And so overall, they're really good for 70 points as well. And so is the Weird Boy. He's not 70 points, but he's pretty good just by himself. He's 55, and he can teleport. And so you already know where this is going. He just exists to do secondaries. You just roll a dice, and I think you can only do this on 1 unit in your army. And yep, it says right there that only 1 thing in your army can do it, but he can just teleport himself around every turn and try to get you some secondaries. And so I love that about him. I love that he's 55 points. But other than that, he's kind of meh. Your war boss in mega armor is going to be one of your main leaders. He's fine. He's 80 points, so he's a little bit overpriced in my opinion, but whatever. He's toughness 6 with 7 wounds. He has a 5-up invuln. His combat is only 4 attacks. Like, what is going on with that? He should have 6 attacks. It's strength 12, AP 2, and only 2 damage. It should either be 3 damage or he should have 6 attacks. Or, you know what? Just give him both. He's a fucking war boss in mega armor. Like, what the fuck is this? He gives the unit +1 to hit that he leads, so that's pretty good, I guess, but like, Jesus Christ. But also when you call the Wog, until the start of the next battle round, he has a 4-up Feel No Pain. Again, okay, you have to wipe out his entire unit, and then he's like, hey, I'm alive for this 1 turn. It's fine, but it's kind of fucking not fine. But you kind of need to take one of these guys if you're taking Mega Knobs. You're either going to take him or the mech in power armor, or mega armor, because he returns a guy to your unit. And he's also relatively cheap. Just kidding. He's actually more expensive than the fucking war boss somehow at 85 points. But if you're going to take mega armored knobs, you're probably going to take either the big mech or the war boss in power armor, mega armor, some kind of orky armor. Now, the regular war boss is only 65 points, and he will be able to lead knobs and boys. He also gives that +1 to hit for the unit that he's with, and then when he calls a Wog, you add 4 to the attacks characteristic of his weapons, which for this guy are pretty good. It's going to be that big Choppa with 9 attacks then, or a Power Claw with 8 attacks. Now, you're going to go with the Power Claw. It's strength 10, AP 2, damage 2, with 8 attacks. That's pretty good, hitting on 3s for some reason. For 2s if he's attached to a unit though. So for 65 points, he's he's good. I mean, he's got 6 wounds at toughness 5. He does have that 5-up invuln, so he's not super hard to kill, but he puts out a decent amount of damage, especially when he wogs in there. And it's like your army wants a lot of things to wog and get into combat like on the same turn, and sometimes you just can't do that. Sometimes like you just literally can't do that. The way the game is played, you can't just do everything in one turn. You've got to like do things for 5 turns. So we've gone over everything I care about, which is the only thing you should care about as well. But what do you guys think? How are the orcs doing? I think they have a lot of really good units. They are just built around combat, and all of their stratagems are meant to just get you in there and get you killing stuff better. Your army rule, it's awesome. Gives you that advance and charge. The +1 attack is really good on just about all your units. No matter what you're taking, whether it's like squig hogs or knobs, getting an extra attack on every single model, plus an extra strength on every single model, plus a 5-up invuln on every single model. That turn when you get in there is gonna hit really, really hard. Plus you're getting sustained hits 1, and it really starts to snowball. If you can hit your opponent hard enough in that one turn, if you can really break their back, oh man, the wog is how you do it. The wog is the turn where you want to break your opponent's back. So you got a lot of really fast stuff like your squig hog guys, you've got your trucks, you've got like Def Coptas, Grot tanks, Storm Boys, and you have a lot of expendable bodies. You have a lot of like mixed units that are pretty threatening, and you can just kind of overload your opponent and just be like, which one of these do you want to have to deal with, because they're all going to kill you in a different way. And so that's always nice to have, and especially with some good strats that can make those units that they target even that much harder to get rid of and to deal with. So you can play them in a lot of different ways. You can play with a variety of different units, to the point where you can almost make a good shooting army with orcs in this edition. But overall, you know, your shooting does suck, aside from like mech guns and grot tanks and, you know, the flash git trick. And most of your units are not very durable. Your stuff is also pretty easy to move block if you're taking a bunch of squig hog riders and trucks and just like big units like that. It's easy for your opponent to get in there with units pretty early on and kind of just make walls against you and make it so you can't get into anywhere that matters. Because, yeah, they don't have, like, a whole lot of flying or anything. You can't, like, ramp your careening tank over. Not allowed. So you have to know when to commit, and you just kind of struggle against a lot of shooting armies. Hiding units is a big part of the game, and sometimes when you're playing with big units, it can be difficult. That's one reason why you don't really see a lot of hordy units. That's not anywhere close to being the main reason, but that's just another reason why they're not really great in this edition. Shooting kind of just puts things away. And so it more revolves around having a lot of durable units, or just kind of threat overloading with things like in transports and stuff, because they're cheap. It's 2 units, because you got to kill the transport, and then the other one, in that order. And so it makes it nice. You can play them in a lot of different ways. You just got to know the strengths and the weaknesses of the way that you're building each way. And so that is going to be my take on the orcs. Lots of good units, lots of good strats, lots of ways to play the game, really good at combat, really good at playing the objective game because they want to get up there and they want to crump. But let me know what you guys think down below. Leave us a comment, tell us what you think about the orcs, tell us what your strategies have been, tell us how you've been faring in 10th edition. Subscribe to Theory Hammer, hit the bell icon as well, Nurgle will be very proud, and crump the shit out of the like button as well, and be sure to look out for all of our new videos. We got all kinds of stuff on the way. A whole bunch of different series that I'm making, battle reports, even more Tacticas, list reviews, all kinds of stuff. I'm in love with 40K, and I just want to get it out there and just talk all day long about these different things. And so with that, guys, I'm going to wog my way out of here, and I'll see you guys in the next one.